And while the handshake the world has its eyes on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to visit China after 7 long years. This for the SCO summit that is to happen in China. He will be arriving in Tianjin. This will happen at about 4 p.m. this afternoon, in about an hour from now. During the visit, Prime Minister Modi will also hold bilateral talks with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping and Russian President Putin. This much-awaited meeting comes at a critical juncture, following the recent agreements between both the nations, notably on military disengagement along the LAC, which has been a major flashpoint from the 2020 Galwan clash. It is being said that a secret letter by the Chinese president to President Draupadi Murmu in March helped spur the Delhi-Beijing thaw. The report that suggests that the letter was an attempt to test the waters on improving bilateral ties. The message was later shared with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who set off a series of back-channel talks and helped revive diplomatic engagement between the two Asian giants. The Modi-Xi meeting that also comes amid Trump's tariff tyranny. China has strongly opposed the US decision to impose up to 50% tariffs on India. Beijing says it will stand firmly with India to protect global trade rules, warning that silence only emboldens the bully. Let me cut across to Gaurav Sawant joining us from Tianjin, where the SCO meet is to take place. And in about an hour from now, Gaurav, Prime Minister Narendra Modi to land there. All eyes on how the meeting will pan out when it comes to the bilateral with Xi Jinping and, of course, later with Putin. But what's lined up for today and what can we expect?
This is a very crucial visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Tianjin, and as you rightly pointed out, after 7 years, the first visit to China after Galwan clashes. Of course, the two had met in Kazan, in Kazakhstan, and that was where the Kazan thaw led to some improvement in India-China relations that had hit an all-time low after the Galwan clashes and the subsequent situation. However, the attempt now is to see if this relationship can now be improved further. Both sides. Remember, when the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in India, he'd indicated that the tensions were not in the interests of the people of the two countries and they wanted to move forward. They were talking about what efforts need to be taken to improve ties further. India's made it very clear, peace and tranquility at the borders essential for improvement in ties. Now, this is the relationship where China wants to move forward economically. People-to-people ties are being improved with the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. The supplies of fertilizers had been curtailed. Those supplies are to resume. Direct flights from Delhi to Beijing, they are to resume. Once all of that happens, people-to-people contacts improve. But what happens at the borders? Right now, there is a cold freeze at the borders with 50,000 troops on either side. Though disengagement has taken place at all friction points, de-escalation and de-induction are yet to take place. So will there be forward movement on that? The National Security Advisor level talks, which is known as the Special Representative talks on boundary, that's been happening. The Foreign Ministry level talks have been happening. The WMCC talks have been happening. Border talks have been happening at the level of the core commander. So at multiple level talks are happening. Again, this becomes very crucial at a time when the United States has imposed 25% and then an additional 25% tariffs on India. Now, given that situation, when India-US ties are at a low, you have Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan, and then a meeting with President Putin. And then will there be a picture that people in China are talking about, that people in Russia are talking about, Russia, India, China on the same platform, beyond BRICS, beyond SCO? That would be that big message that would go out to the Western countries. India, of course, wants to be close both to the West and to groupings like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and to groupings like BRICS, which is extremely powerful. India is always invited to G7. So it remains to be seen how these talks move forward bilaterally and multilaterally.
Continue talking to us, Gaurav, because the SCO summit is going to be loaded. Of course, we all are watching for the meeting that is to take place with Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting Xi Jinping, and then, of course, Putin. But let's not forget that even Pakistan will be present at the SCO summit, Shehbaz Sharif representing his country. And given the dynamic, what do you think we're looking out for?
You know, counter-terrorism is one of the most important parts of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This entity, this body came together. Countering terrorism was one of its main agendas, and RATS, its outfit, is something that talks about countering terrorism. India has been trying to repeatedly bring the focus on cross-border terrorism. That is something that India has been suffering for decades, including that latest Pahalgam terror attack, which led to India's Operation Sindoor, which was a massive counter-attack by India. So the fact remains right now, India's entire effort is to ensure that cross-border terrorism, all the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries, they come together on the same front and hit out, condemn cross-border terrorism. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it's a part of this grouping. You'd recall when we were reporting from Astana, that's when India and Pakistan became a part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But India has contributed positively. One expects other countries also contribute positively, including Pakistan. But as far as SCO is concerned, it's extremely significant that you have India-Eurasia contact, which is being taken forward. So Asia and Europe coming together, China, India, Central Asian countries and Russia playing a pivotal role in taking this grouping forward.
Gaurav, the other point I want to talk to you about is the tariff conflict that the world is witnessing. And as far as America is concerned, their position is very clear. For them, it is America first. But that is leading to unfair trade practices. China, India and several other nations are citing that. The fact that China too faces Trump's tariffs. How can this help a changing equation when it comes to those who are at the receiving end as far as the US is concerned?
You know, that is one of the biggest questions that the world is grappling with right now. The unilateral tariffs that President Donald Trump is imposing on countries, including on allied partners, treaty allies like Japan and South Korea, on the European Union. So look at the way Japan is now furiously backpedaling. South Korea is looking at these tariffs. India, the only country in the world to stand tall and say that these 25% additional tariffs are completely uncalled for, because it is not to spite any country that India is taking oil from Europe, from Russia. In fact, it was a request of the Biden administration to ensure that global oil prices are kept in check. That's why India had increased procurement of oil, and India is not the largest importer of Russian oil. Europe imports more gas. China imports more oil. So now you have these countries that are coming together and in a way standing up to the American bullying tactics. India always wanted great relations with America because these are two very powerful democracies operating in tandem. There is so much meeting of the minds between these two countries, except that Donald Trump is throwing away 25 years of investment in this relationship, both by India and by China. So right now, what comes out of Tianjin is something that America would be looking at, the Western world will be looking at, because they also do not want in a way, the entire effort of that pivot to Asia through India, or the pivot to India, the entire effort was that wean India away from the Chinese, as the Americans put it, the Chinese stranglehold. However, what Donald Trump has actually done is push India closer to Russia and China. So the situation right now is India is walking the diplomatic tightrope, wanting good relations with China, wanting good relations with Russia, which is an ally which has stood by us through thick and thin. At the same time, not wanting to spoil relations with America, but the ball is in America's court.
Certainly watching out for that, Gaurav. I request you to stay on with us as we have more breaking news coming in. Let's quickly cut across to that, after which I come back to you. And in the latest, we are learning that China is planning military parade post the SCO summit. In fact, China's military parade that is being planned in Beijing is what we understand. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif will also be there to witness this parade. Pakistan Prime Minister will be witnessing the gala military parade that is being planned. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, Xi Jinping are all set to launch CPEC 2.0 soon after the 25th SCO summit. China will be organizing a massive military parade in Beijing to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the Chinese People's War of Resistance. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif will be witnessing the gala military parade, this being held on the 3rd of September 2025 in Beijing. Pakistan Prime Minister will be in Beijing for this state visit to China after participating in the SCO summit. President Xi Jinping, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who will all jointly launch the CPEC 2.0. I want to take this point to Gaurav. Concerning Gaurav is that, and also with regards to the military parade that is being planned, how do you see that development?
So China and Pakistan, they call themselves higher than mountains and deeper than oceans relationship. But China has been concerned the manner in which Pakistan's military leadership has been cozying up to the United States of America. There is talk of Americans with Saudi Arabia getting mining rights in Baluchistan region. And that is where China has invested heavily. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is almost $60 billion worth. More than $30 billion worth of investment has already taken place. However, India is opposed to the Belt and Road Initiative for the simple reason that it passes through Indian territory that's in illegal control of Pakistan. Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So that is exactly why India remains opposed to it. That's at level 1. Level 2, when they talk about CPEC 2.0, CPEC 1.0 has been a disaster despite $30 billion plus being invested in it. A lot of Chinese engineers and Chinese workers have been killed by terrorists in Pakistan. There have been incidents in Baluchistan. The project hasn't yielded the results that China wanted. And within Pakistan, there are questions that a lot of Pakistani generals have made money out of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, but it hasn't brought the kind of prosperity that Pakistan expected that CPEC would bring to them and the people of Baluchistan who are opposed to it, because they are saying this is exploitation of their resources by Pakistan that occupies Baluchistan and by China with no returns to the people of Baluchistan. So this is fraught with a lot of danger, with a lot of intrigue, and now with America coming in, it becomes very interesting to see. There were some reports that seemed to indicate that China had given Pakistan quite a dressing down in the manner in which Pakistan was cozying up to America at a time when China had invested so heavily in Pakistan and held Pakistan's hand when Pakistan was in deep trouble. So, we need to see what goes beyond optics, beyond the military parade, on what actually happens in CPEC 2.0 and where does America fit into that larger scheme of things, because America and Saudi Arabia to an extent are talking about mining rare earth minerals in Baluchistan. Will the Baluch freedom fighters accept that? Will it lead to more bloodshed? All of these, several balls up in the air. Remains to be seen how this is negotiated. But very, very interesting times to be right here in Tianjin. So when we were reporting from Kazan, we saw the thaw between India and China for the first time post the Galwan incident. And now what we are watching is whether that relationship between India and China is taken to the next level on the basis of peace and tranquility at the borders, essentially.
Indeed, very interesting, Gaurav, and just so many factors that are now coming into play when we are talking about a diplomatic reset between India and China. I also want to bring you the point of how China and India seek to thaw ties and resume direct flights, this after a gap of 5 years. And India and China also discussing easing trade barriers, including the reopening of border trade at 3 Himalayan crossings. How is that to shape up as part of this meet?
That's a very interesting question, and that is something that India has been very keen on, both India and China. When the conversation is about peace and tranquility at the borders, that's only when trade begins. Nathula had trade. The aim is Nathula, Shipkila. These are places where border trade should resume once again, because that, in a way, marks demarcation of borders when trade is happening through authorized border trading points. So Nathula is very important, Shipkila is very important. Will it extend to other places of traditional trading points on borders, peace and tranquility at the borders, and demarcation of borders? That is India's principal effort, that India and China should finally sit down and discuss how the borders are to be made peaceful, because China's efforts have been that talks continue and trade continues, the relationship moves forward on an even keel in other aspects, and you leave border tensions to a future generation. India's point throughout has been, unless borders are peaceful, you cannot move forward. So there is one hope, and there is some conversation that seems to indicate that China too is looking at peaceful borders. When you have peaceful borders, and if you have demarcated borders, then there would be peace on borders, and your relationship can move forward, which would be mutually beneficial. It will benefit the people of China, it will benefit the people of India. And India, when we are looking at our aim to become the third largest economy in the world, this is where this trade will play a very critical role.
Gaurav, I request you to stay on with us as we give our viewers a larger picture of what really is the agenda, as this bilateral is slated between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping, and what is possibly going to be discussed. So let's understand. Border stability, of course, happens to be top priority. LAC troop disengagement, this is something that has been going on for years, that India has been talking, and this again will figure on the top of the discussion. The other one, of course, being reviving trade amid global economic slowdown, and we just discussed that point of how India and China are looking to ease trade barriers. India's trade deficit with China will figure as part of these talks. In fact, China to invest in India. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited foreign investors, saying that India is the most promising destination as of now when it comes to a reliable haven for businesses, and that again will make it as a part of this discussion to how Chinese can invest in India. Global South voice in multilateral forums is again the key point, as we are looking to strengthen the Global South, and that is why with India, Russia, China coming under the same roof, that is the very aim, and of course cooperation on climate and green technologies. Now, sustainability is what the world is working towards, and that again is something that the global leaders are looking to achieve. Counter-terrorism, coordination in neighborhood regions. India has always spoken about fighting terrorism tooth and nail, and the message has gone on loud and clear, and that exactly will be part of talks again. Now, why and how can it be a win-win for India and China if all these points that we discussed can reach a middle ground? What are the various possibilities? Now, the first possibility is that both seek newer markets to offset losses given the tariff conflict. That is especially something that the entire globe is witnessing, both India and China looking to harp on this possibility. What is the second possibility? Push for greater South-South trade. Now, this is again very important, because then we'll see newer trade grouping that is happening that will benefit India and China both. The possibility of how China may offer India trade concessions, this will hugely benefit India, and that is something that India is looking to negotiate at the same time. The fourth possibility is that India gains leverage in negotiating US deals. Now, we know how Trump is bullying India when it comes to levying that 50% trade tariff, and China also facing the brunt on that end. So this can give India an edge when it comes to coming to the negotiating table and discussing the US deal. Also, a huge possibility that India and China will reduce the reliance on US market. Now, this is something that all those nations who are facing the brunt of tariffs by the US are looking to do. Reduce that dependence and find interpersonal reliance. I want to go back to my colleague Gaurav Sawant, who continues to report from Tianjin. And Gaurav, I believe about 40 minutes or under an hour, I'd say, is the scheduled time, is when Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to land there for the SCO summit. But talking about strengthening global South is certainly something that India, China and Russia are looking to do. Please reflect on that.
So there is tremendous excitement here in Tianjin right now. In just about 40 minutes from now, the Prime Minister's aircraft will touch down from Japan. The hotel where we are at the Prime Minister's hotel. We, unfortunately, because of security, cannot move from this restricted space. A group of Indians, they've assembled here, waiting to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They want to greet the Prime Minister as he comes in. There is excitement about the Prime Minister's visit, but the very important aspect that you raised, the global South. India's G20 presidency saw India get the African Union to be a part of the global South. India, not through words but action, has shown that India cares for the global South. One, G20 leadership. Two, if you recall, when the COVID times hit us, the entire world, the entire developed world, they just sat down on the vaccine. They didn't share the vaccine with anyone. Now, India, a 1.4 billion strong nation, we could have been dependent on the West. We could have been on a bent knee seeking vaccines from them and then getting a very tiny share or not getting it when our people needed it. India started manufacturing vaccines. And two, you had both Covishield and Covaxin. And Covaxin entirely made in India. Covishield also manufactured in India. And what did India do? We didn't just use it for our people. India very large-heartedly shared it with the developing world, with very small islands in the Pacific, with countries in Africa, in the Indian Ocean region, and all across. What did that lead to? You know, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited some of these countries, what did the leaders say? Some of them touched his feet, some of them had tears in their eyes, some of them hugged him, saying what? When the West wasn't giving us the vaccine, you did. India is truly, a part of the family of the global South, a part of family of the developing world. So this is India's civilizational philosophy, which was reflected in G20 with the motto of the G20 being Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And when you look at that entire, what is India's philosophy? Ayam nij paroveti garna lagu chetasam udar charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. What's yours? What's mine? This much is mine, that much is yours. All of that is said about only those who think very small. Those who are large-hearted, for them the entire world is one family, and that is India's philosophy. So India has shown that by example, not just during COVID. You'd recall, I was reporting from the Ukraine battlefield. That was the time that the world could not get the fertilizers that they required, and a lot of fertilizers and food grain comes out of Russia and it comes out of Ukraine. The people couldn't get it. What did India do? Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached out both to Russia and to Ukraine and ensured that both fertilizers and food grain, it could come out of that area, because food grain prices would have gone through the roof otherwise. And as you well know, Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of the world. So all of that could come out of there and could be given to the world. So this is where India shows the leadership in global South, ensuring people get food, they get vaccines, they get medicines when they require, they get oil when they require, for which America may try to sanction us, but that's really not the correct thing. What does India do? India refines that crude. Even Europe and America takes it. And look at the American double standards. The refined fuel that we export to Europe and America, that does not come under this 50% taxation. But what we want to consume in our own country will come under it. Pharmaceuticals that America requires does not come under 50% sanctions. But whatever else is, they may come under 50% sanctions. So the West may have blatant double standards, India does not. And that is why in today's world, they truly realize the importance of being the leader of global South. India does that. China and Russia are saying, let's do it, let's all do it together, so that we are a very formidable force to take on Western powers.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Gaurav. And like you rightly pointed out, these are very interesting times in which we see the kind of reset that is happening, and the SCO summit that quite lays or rather rolls the carpet for that for the world leaders who are set to arrive. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, of course, will be arriving in less than an hour.